The inevitable confrontation, the collision of reckless, selfish desire and absolute, unforgiving power, arrived with the terrifying, predetermined precision of a strategically calculated event, the moment Victor Sterling had spent weeks anticipating and subtly orchestrating. The immense, stifling tension that had been tightening around the Sterling penthouse for weeks finally snapped. Victor Sterling, the chairman, having received the final, undeniable proof of his wife's infidelity and the lover's audacious proximity to his most sensitive secrets, chose the venue and the timing for the final, brutal reckoning with the detached air of a man scheduling a necessary, unpleasant surgery. It was not intended to be a grand, dramatic spectacle of emotional outburst, but a cold, clinical maneuver designed solely to achieve absolute control and eliminate all liabilities with maximum efficiency. The chosen location was a small, high-security private gallery owned by a subsidiary of Sterling Industries, a seemingly innocuous, secluded place where Eleanor and her lover, still dangerously oblivious to the depth of their exposure, often met in the misguided belief that its exclusivity guaranteed their privacy from the world. This setting was surgically ideal for Victor's purpose. It was isolated, devoid of witnesses outside his direct, highly compromised control, and already equipped with the necessary infrastructural security, including sound-dampening walls and private access routes, to manage a messy situation. Darren Finch, operating on the cold, dispassionate, yet terrifyingly clear orders received directly from Victor Sterling, orders deliberately vague in language but undeniably pointing toward the permanent elimination of a contractual breach, had meticulously prepared the logistics in the hours leading up to the confrontation. He had ensured the security detail was composed solely of Cale's most trusted, morally neutral enforcers, guaranteeing absolute discretion and unwavering execution. He confirmed all external communication channels were jammed or routed through the chairman's private, encrypted servers. Darren knew with complete, intellectual certainty that he was facilitating a personal catastrophe that would likely end in violence. Yet he moved through the final preparations with the terrifying calmness of a man who had completely internalized the calculus of inevitability. His only goal was self-preservation, which, in this context, meant maintaining his operational utility and demonstrating absolute, functional loyalty to Victor Sterling, the ultimate architect of his current power and future wealth. He saw no personal choice, only the unavoidable necessity of the path he had chosen. When the chairman finally arrived at the gallery, he was not in a blind, emotional rage, which would have been predictable and manageable. He was in a state of controlled, surgical fury that was infinitely more dangerous. He was accompanied by Cale, his security chief, and two silent, massive, heavily armed guards whose sole function was immediate, lethal obedience. Eleanor and her lover, a man whose superficial charm instantly evaporated under the immense, crushing, physical weight of Victor Sterling's sudden, cold presence, were already present, instantly cornered like trapped prey by the sudden, inexplicable failure of their supposed security sanctuary. The air in the gallery was thick with the scent of expensive materials, overwhelming, paralyzing fear, and the unmistakable metallic tang of imminent violence. When the chairman finally confronted Eleanor Sterling and her lover, his words were not shouts of wounded pride, but cold, precise indictments of contractual betrayal and gross negligence. He spoke of assets, operational boundaries, and the exponential cost of insubordination, ruthlessly reducing Eleanor's frantic, emotional affair to a simple, unforgivable business error that required immediate remediation. Eleanor finally, completely understood the true, lethal extent of her danger. Her initial, fragile defiance instantly replaced by pure, paralyzing terror that stole her breath. The lover, however, a man of weak resolve, driven by a fatal, reckless cocktail of blinding fear and shallow, desperate bravado, made the catastrophic, final mistake of reaching for a small, concealed self-defense weapon he carried. In the tight, controlled space, this desperate gesture was instantly interpreted by Cale's trained guards not as a plea for survival, but as an active, hostile execution threat against the chairman. Violence erupted instantly and violently. The guards moved with brutal, overwhelming efficiency. The brief, shattering sounds of the struggle quickly muffled by the gallery's heavy, insulated walls and strategic location. The lover was instantly subdued. The struggle fast, desperate, and sickeningly one-sided. Victor Sterling, accustomed to commanding violence from the immense distance of a corporate boardroom or a secured communication line, was visibly and momentarily shaken, not by the violence itself, but by the physical proximity of the raw, unpredictable force. He took a reflexive, instinctive step backward, his face betraying a rare, brief flicker of genuine alarm, revealing a deep-seated fear of losing control over the immediate, physical environment, a rare, valuable vulnerability. Darren, who had meticulously positioned himself just outside the main confrontation area as the operational overseer, instantly saw that single, brief, crucial moment of weakness in Victor Sterling. He saw the potential for the entire event to descend into messy, unmanageable chaos, threatening Sterling's carefully maintained public image of absolute, unflappable control. More importantly, he saw a final, definitive path to finalize his operational loyalty and earn a catastrophic debt from Sterling that could never be repaid with mere money. Darren, still fiercely loyal to the man who had elevated him from nothing, instantly, decisively rushed in toward the center of the conflict, moving not to intervene physically but to manage the narrative. He was not rushing to protect Eleanor, whose fate was already sealed by her own recklessness and Victor's cold decision. He was rushing, purely and entirely, to protect the integrity of Victor Sterling's public image and the essential operational continuity of the chairman's global enterprise. The scene that unfolded was a frozen tableau of violence and control, the lover wounded, bleeding, and subdued, Eleanor paralyzed by shock and terror, and Victor Sterling momentarily exposed by his own vulnerability. Darren took immediate, decisive action, his mind working at lightning speed. He barked sharp, precise orders to Cale's men, instantly stabilizing the physical chaos and securing the lover's person. Then, he executed the ultimate act of operational sacrifice and strategic betrayal of self. Recognizing that Victor Sterling could not, under any circumstance, be seen to have been personally involved in a violent, messy domestic scene, even one of justified defense, Darren seized the narrative and the physical evidence. He took the lover's still warm, discarded weapon, placed it strategically in his own hand, and began instantly and flawlessly manufacturing a credible, airtight, compartmentalized cover story for Cale's benefit. This narrative framed the entire incident as a rogue operational failure on his part, a botched security protocol during a routine check that led to necessary self-defense and unintended consequences when the civilian violently resisted. To protect Victor, Darren took the blame for the incident. He claimed absolute, full responsibility for the planning, the failure of security, and the subsequent physical altercation, asserting he had acted entirely alone under intense, life-threatening pressure when the civilian lover became violently aggressive. It was the only viable way to surgically remove Victor Sterling from the immediate blast radius and ensure the chairman's reputation remained totally untarnished by the messiness of personal infidelity and physical confrontation. Darren's confession was meticulously detailed, coldly logical, and flawlessly delivered, a masterful, self-destructive lie rooted entirely in operational truth. Designed specifically to be believed and accepted by the corrupt law enforcement agencies Sterling ultimately controlled. He provided Cale, his former superior and future handler, with the exact narrative, the precise pieces of false evidence, and the necessary operational alibis for Sterling himself. Cale, a man who understood the value of such absolute, self-immolating loyalty better than anyone, immediately recognized the strategic genius and the immense cost of Darren's action. Victor, profoundly shaken but immensely grateful for the self-sacrificing brilliance, watched this supreme display of absolute, functional loyalty. He saw a man who valued the systemic survival, who valued his integrity above his own personal freedom and life. For a man like Sterling, devoid of genuine emotion, this was the highest, most valuable form of worship and commitment. Sterling instantly understood the implications. By taking the fall, Darren was cementing his role as the ultimate, indispensable, disposable shield, the man who would always put the chairman's interests first, even at the cost of his immediate, temporary freedom. Sterling did not hesitate to capitalize on this immense sacrifice. He had the absolute power to make the entire incident vanish without a trace, but allowing Darren to take the arrest served a greater, more chilling, and ultimately more binding purpose. It would forever bind Darren to him through a shared monumental, violent secret and provide an immediately deployable, airtight cover story for the chaos. Victor made the calculated, ruthless decision to allow Darren to take the fall, knowing with absolute, mathematical certainty that Darren would protect his reputation and the sprawling, legitimate facade of his empire during the subsequent controlled investigation. He promised Darren, in a low, resonant, emotionless voice that carried the immense weight of billions, that he would be taken care of, that his time inside would be minimized through the best legal teams, and that his eventual release would be handled with the same clinical precision with which he handled complex logistics. Sterling did not offer a tearful farewell or a sympathetic glance. He offered a definitive transaction, a promise of future reward. "You have earned my absolute, irrefutable debt, Finch. This is the final payment of your necessary initiation. You will be compensated commensurate with the risk taken, and your service will be remembered." Within hours, the carefully constructed, flawless narrative was deployed and accepted by the authorities. Darren was arrested at the scene by municipal police officers who were already on the chairman's deep, extensive payroll. He remained quiet, cooperative, and impeccably professional throughout the booking process, providing the pre-approved, flawless, self-incriminating statement that implicated him fully and completely cleared Sterling. Eleanor, who was now conveniently repositioned as a deeply shocked, complicit victim, and the chairman's legitimate organization of any direct criminal involvement. He carried the full, immense weight of the crime, the messiness, the violence, and the profound moral ambiguity of Sterling's private world, allowing the billionaire to emerge entirely clean, his immense power seemingly untouched and unquestioned. Darren was swiftly sent to a high-security holding facility to await trial, the entire legal process already being quietly managed and choreographed by Sterling's top legal counsel to minimize the term and control the information flow. He faced this immense punishment with quiet resignation, his mind utterly devoid of self-pity or retrospective doubt, viewing the cold jail cell not as a prison of failure, but as the inevitable, strategically necessary consequence of choosing the path of immense transactional power. He saw it as the final, dark chapter in his cursed life as Augustus Finch, the vulnerable poet who was always going to fail in the subjective world. Now, the failure was complete, public, and functionally deployed. He had secured Sarah's long-term future, proven his ultimate, self-sacrificing loyalty, and most importantly, acquired an unassailable, non-monetary debt from the most powerful, dangerous man in the global criminal underworld. The transaction was complete, and the price was his temporary freedom. He sat alone in the cold, silent cell, a man who had murdered his own soul for the ultimate survival, utterly isolated but supremely aware that his calculated sacrifice had just bought him the most valuable currency in Victor Sterling's transactional world: absolute, unquestioning trust and a guaranteed, accelerated path back to exponential, permanent power. He had chosen the dark road, and now he was simply paying the temporary operational toll. His exile was not a setback. It was a carefully calculated, strategically necessary maneuver designed to catapult him to the final stage of his ascent.